1208. There's one thing in particular, a big charge for IES commercial, and that was electrical work.
That was the reconductoring that was done, you approved and then had to reapprove. Yeah, and that, by the way, is just for their labor, the materials we provided by the city.
That's the standard. Any other questions or comments on that? So do I have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 1208 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's approved as presented. Next item is proposed minutes of the meeting on the 5th. Look good to me. Anything on that? We have, okay, so the minutes are approved. And do we need to add any agenda? We have at least one thing, some improvements to lighting. I think Dave's gonna talk about that. Agenda I. Yes? Is it Patty?
I would like to add it to the agenda for an invoice I received from the city.
For an invoice.
Yep.
So, lighting. Invoice query. And I would like to, I sent a draft letter.
It should be laying in front of you
Okay.
on stationery.
I just want to make sure that that's okay with everyone. The letter we talked about, we should reply to the library.
Lighting.
So just so we can,
This is your copy.
and I kind of wanted to talk, because when I was down here earlier, the HR, the consulting group was here. And I think that we should at least just talk about that, see where we are in the process. And
So they would like input on
yeah,
either a potential work session or a daytime meeting with individual commissioners for 60 to 90 minutes.
okay. So can we
Add
just-
that to the
Yeah,
agenda.
just so we can discuss it. as a group.
We're gonna add both library and the HR.
Yeah, it's quick. Those should be
Yeah,
pretty.
no, that's fine.
Library is K.
Yeah, so lighting improvements, I, invoice question J, library letter K, and I'm calling it, for lack of a better term, HR study,
It's the Arnold Group.
Arnold Group.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So the first agenda item is the C-CLIP bid review. Pat Cox is here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
In your commission package, you should have a pretty detailed synopsis of the bid events that took place last Wednesday afternoon. I think Reese put those in there for you. Jason Hoskinson, the head of our transportation department, put this together. He was unable to attend this meeting tonight, and he apologized, but I'm here in his place and I can go through and answer any questions here for you. And basically what this does is sets out the tone of what happened and kind of the options you have available to you on the direction forward. And I hope that we can get through this expediently for you tonight and move forward to make decisions. It's astronomical, the cost of construction right now. It's went up astronomically. The low bid on this project was $148 a ton for HMA commercial grade asphalt. That's 50% higher than what it was not very long ago. But the bids received are representative of the construction index today. You're not the only community. Every community that's bidding projects right now has got this same problem going on. Costs way more because of whatever reason, cost of materials, inflation, whatever. And so, with that said, I could go through this in a lot of detail, and I will if you ask me to, or ask me a question, I'll back up and go into it. But the long and the short of it is, scenario one, we received 2 bids, one from Schilling Asphalt, one from Bettis Asphalt. They were asked to bid on the Highway 24 improvements and the K63 improvements, including as an alternate alley work on K63. And you all that have been on long enough will remember that the 24 highway was a project in itself and funded, and then we applied again, got K63 highway, then everybody got their heads together and made a decision that it was probably in the best interest of the city to combine both those projects into one big project, maybe with the potential to get a little better bids. Schilling and Bettis have always been the two that compete in this community. There are other asphalt companies around, Sunflower out of Lawrence, they weren't interested. There's other companies to the north, south, whatever. But those two seem to be most competitive, and that's the only bids we got. Because what we do for you is we go out, we beat the weeds trying to get general contractors to bid on our work. Because the more bids you have, usually the more competitive it is. So if you were to approve scenario one, which is just basically the base bid, 24 highway, 63 highway, without the alley improvements on 63, the city's remaining cost would be $634,936. That's what you would have to come up with out of the city coffers. And that's with, Jason went to bat initially with KDOT, and we actually got $60,000 more, and the number above that in scenario one, we're getting $795,000 from KDOT participation in the balance for construction.
Pat, can you remind them that part of this is a KDOT project as well? Did you already mention that? Why they gave us the extra 60,000
Yes.
was for their portion.
There was, part of the reason for the additional $60,000 was because of the high bids. They had, in your interlocal agreement for connecting Lake Road maintenance, they missed a spot north of 63. So they put it in here, and they've added $60,000 to their coffers to give you to help pay for this project. So, with that said, that's scenario one, just awarding the base bid. We do that based upon the low bid. Schilling would be the low bidder. Scenario two would be all of it plus add alternate one, which are the alley improvements as well. In that case, Bettis would be the low bidder, and the city's remaining cost of the project would be approximately $771,575. Now, here's what we really need to concentrate on, and so on, is the options available to the city. Option one would be to award base bid only to Schilling Asphalt and move forward. Option two would be to award it all, and if you did that, it would be Bettis Asphalt Construction would be the low bidder. Option three, and I want to expand upon this the way it was written. There, we really have, option three really has a whole lot of options within it. Reject all bids and rebid. And we can do that. But my experience has been, over a lot of years, there's only been one or two times in approximately 50 years that I actually got better bids by rebidding the same project down the road. If we were to go with the rebid scenario, probably what it would do, in whatever fashion, is the project may not even start yet this year. It may be pushed into spring start of work. And one of the options is, because we combined two projects initially, would be to take the 24 highway project, which is a little less than half of the overall cost, and take it out of the equation. And we couldn't award, by doing that under this bid, we would have to rebid the project without 24 highway improvements, then come back at a future time and reapply for 24 highway. That's an option available to you also. That probably, if any, there would probably be very little work done yet this fall. It would probably push it into the spring. In doing that, it would obviously cut the initial city's cost, because we're eliminating 24 highway with anticipation that we get funds down the road and more KDOT participation, because when we were funded on that one originally, we got 300,000, and now CCLEP participation is 400,000. So please interrupt me anytime, because I'm saying a lot of stuff here, and I want to make sure that you all understand. So if you have a question, stop me anytime.
Hey Pat, I have a question. So the 795 would go down if we pulled out. The 795 that KDOT's gonna reimburse would go down to 400 if we pulled the projects apart and just said, let's do 63 only. We wouldn't get that full 795.
No, well, maybe. I'm gonna talk about another possibility here, but I think we have more work to do yet with KDOT.
Okay.
Before, I wouldn't want you guys to make a decision without us pushing turning over every rock and pushing strategically, potentially maybe to get more funds from KDOT. So kind of, I don't really have a strong recommendation, but I'm here to tell you, I think it's in your best interest probably to allow us to get with KDOT in a very timely fashion and come back to your next meeting and probably have more detailed information and maybe some good news about additional funding from KDOT, whatever. But if we do that, we can still award a project, but it's gonna probably push it into the spring. So yes, you're right, we don't know, and I can't sit here and tell you until additional scrutiny is done with KDOT, what the 771 number will actually be if we pull the 24 highway part out. Because what I don't know is if KDOT's gonna take the 300,000 away from us and just allow us to use the 400 plus from the K63 improvements. That makes sense?
So, I had a question here. It says KDOT said that they'll grant, if we plan on doing the rebid, said that, KDOT said that the grant will be there so long as the rehab happens soon. What is it? Is that 6 months, a year, or 2 years?
What is soon? Good question.
Well, that's really a good
Is
question.
that gonna go away, or?
Well, yeah, they're not gonna give you a year to sit around and try to make a decision and financially fund the project. When we competed for the project and were successful, and then they were combined, at the time, and based upon the construction index at that time, using KDOT numbers and numbers for the bidding atmosphere at that time, the city pretty much committed to doing the project within those confines. Well, the prices went up, so all bets are off, and now we gotta figure out, what's in the best interest of the city to pay for this thing. Everybody wants it. KDOT wants you to build it. They wanna work with the city. They've commented to me personally before that they enjoy working with this city because you're serious about what you do with your roads, and you always do a good job in utilizing their funds, and it makes them look good. Because not all cities do that.
So is the bottom line this, you're asking them to table it at least until the August 1st meeting, so that in between now and then, we can try to negotiate some kind of alternative for KDOT that would be more affordable and just address
Yes.
K63?
Maybe exactly what you have in front of you. I may come back, and Jason will be here at the August 1st meeting. We may come back and say, pulled all the punches, did everything we could.
But if we wait, Pat, like you said, I mean, I know you're not a crystal ball, but if we wait even, if we split them up and wait till next year, stuff, price is gonna go up again, and 24 will be more expensive than if we were to do it all at once.
We only had one time in the history that I rebid a project, big project, and it was actually cheaper.
Cheaper, right?
I bid a job one time on the first day of the Saudi war, and it came in $1 million higher than what it should have. And so we all calmed down and gathered and decided to wait 6 months, and we didn't change a thing, and we rebid it in 6 months, and everything had calmed down, and the prices came in to where it was supposed to be. Typically, when you rebid this, especially on asphalt type stuff, you know, they're gonna be looking at the oil index for next spring. There's always a 10% surcharge in the spring. So there's a lot of things to think about here. I don't think it's gonna be cheaper. I don't think it's gonna be equivalent. It will be, if we're successful in getting KDOT to pull 24 out of that, and we rebid, it's a smaller project. Mobilization is still pretty much the same, so the unit price for asphalt probably will be higher. But the overall savings to the city is that you're administering a smaller project, one that you can, afford at this point in time, with the idea that, we'll go right after 24 highway, and we can get funded for 24 highway. Next time, we'll get $400,000 match instead of the 3. So there's kind of a method to the madness, but I can't promise anything in that regard. Yeah, we need to make a decision. Contract bids, the contractors are only required to hold their bids for 30 days. So we bid it on the 12th of July, so that's the 12th of August that we need to tell KDOT what we're doing so that they can get it funds encumbered and awarded.
So it's safe to hold it over at least to August 1st if needed.
Well, that's the way I see it right now.
God, I would just say inquiry, we're looking at this time, we're also looking into replacing water lines. Now, if we go ahead with that project, how much digging up of Highway 24 does that involve?
Richard, that's a real good question, and I'll be honest with you, I can't accurately answer that tonight.
Okay,
But that's a very valid point. I thought your question was going to be, how does that relate to the financial scrutiny of the city budget and how we do that? Well, that's totally different because that's a user-based utility. Same thing with wastewater and water, that's user-based. And I will, since you brought that up, I will tell you, we got you on the intended use plan for both wastewater and water, and we're in good shape there. And that's what we wanted to accomplish in doing that. We don't know exactly, it could be quite some time down the road before any of that gets done, but we started that first step. So that's a good point because we've talked about that on every one of these projects that, you sure don't want to build a brand new beautiful street and the first thing you have to do is saw cut it or take a backhoe and rip it up because you got a broken utility underneath it.
Pat, could you refresh my memory on, you said originally KDOT was gonna give us 300,000, now it's gone up to 400,000.
The new,
Was that for 2024, or is that something that can be utilized now?
well, that's what we don't know. We're trying to push for that. Under the original application and competition for 24, it wasn't that high. So that's what we had to take. But that's part of what we're gonna do is, in your best interest, try to negotiate that to move forward. Jason and I will work with KDOT to set up time very expediently for a meeting. And I will make Maurice aware of optional dates and times so that if any or all of you would like to attend that meeting, you will be informed about it.
Pat, can you remind me how far up 63 it's supposed to go, the improvements?
I didn't bring a set.
Elm Street
I think
is
it
where
goes
the
all
city
way-
ends, and then from Elm to the city, or to the city limits is the KDOT portion.
So it goes to the city limit sign.
Yeah, the KDOT port, that's what he's asking, so it goes all the way from the intersection, railroad, all the way up to the city limits.
Yeah.
But from Elm to the city limits is KDOT's portion, but that, they're piggybacking off of this project.
And that's why they've given us a little more money at this time. Hopefully, we'll get some more, but there's no guarantee.
Alright, so, it seems to me that it's too expensive as it stands. Cause I'm looking at, we would have to augment pretty much all the money we have available from, countywide sales tax by $90,000 or something.
Well,
Isn't
and
it?
so there are transfers out, like to the general fund, and we could reassess the general fund and not make the rest of the transfers this year, and then, you know,
That's still an awful lot that we weren't anticipating
Correct.
with personnel costs. and
all I'm
things
saying
like
is, it could work if it absolutely had to. It's not a good situation because that estimate you have in front of you is 100% of last year's sales tax amount. Now, hopefully we exceed that, but
Right.
there is
As
risk
I recall,
involved.
We're already taking a little bit of a risk by assuming how much we're gonna get in that fund next year.
Well, so in the actual budget, I didn't max that out. On that example spreadsheet, I did.
Yeah.
So we'd have to amend that fund anyway.
I guess my point is, including the question about what's gonna happen if we get to these water projects. I don't know that we have to be in a huge rush to vote, especially since we had only combined them at first, because it seemed like it made sense at the time, and it doesn't seem like it's making so much sense right now.
Well, I will add, because I'm sitting here thinking about it, well, after Richard asked the question, I've been sitting here thinking, most times under state highways, utilities are board, we would never overcut anything, whether it's sewer or water or electric. Electric would either be overhead or underground, and it would all be bored under the highway. So it doesn't necessarily have an impact on your infrastructure in that way. And I don't remember, we're going to be here, Daniel Monaco, myself, and Brian Foster at August 15th. We're having a work session on that day, really to go through all of that stuff in detail. And have a discussion about it at that time in the work session format, hopefully answer all your questions. But
I would also say, no matter what, since we still have time, it makes sense to me that we would talk to KDOT and see what we could do. But we could always come back and say, all right, we'll bite the bullet and try to find the money.
well, that's totally up to you. But I think we need to fight for every penny we can get before you make that final decision on what direction we're gonna go with
And
this.
so I would like that, I mean, if you agree, I think we should just table it, see what the art of the possible is, and then be in a better position to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm fine tabling it, but Pat, in your estimation, which needs repair more, 63 or 24?
63.
I mean, I would personally think we should prioritize that and see if,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly.
try and get all the money from KDOT, but then look at 63 by itself. Because there's parts where I'm pretty sure the shoulder line you can't even see anymore. It's falling
Well,
off.
there's two spots, I drove it twice tonight when I got here, and there's two spots, and you cannot see it, because I drove it twice to see if I could see it, it almost throws you off in the ditch.
Yeah.
There's a subgrade failure in that location, and it dips down, and if you're not holding onto the steering wheel, it'll throw you hard to the right in two locations. And you can't see it to anticipate it, it's not like a pothole or something in front of you. So, but in my opinion, my 2 cents worth, I think K63 carries a higher priority at this point in time. If we have to make a decision about that, then 24 hours. Now, there could be people that disagree with that, but that's my opinion. You asked for it, I'm giving it to you.
Thanks.
So we okay, so.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, yeah.
So let's table it, get some more information, and talk about it again next time.
All right, and again, as soon as we get any of this, we've already had discussions and communications with KDOT, but we need to take it up a step, quite a bit up a step. And that's what we plan on trying to do between now and your next city commission meeting.
Any track record on anything that's happening before? Like someone went in and negotiated with KDOT? better deal on a project because of inflation?
Always, there's that potential.
Yeah.
Still gotta be all within the rules and regulations
Okay.
and so on, but, you know, and I have to say this, and I've probably said it to you before, I'm an engineer, I'm a professional engineer. I'm an attorney and I'm not a politician, but I have to get involved with politicians at times to look out for the best interest of my clients. And that's probably what's gonna happen in this case. I'm gonna reach out to your local politicians and have them assist and see if we can make a difference. So I can't guarantee anything, but I'll be there and Jason will be there to answer absolutely any engineering questions, and the rest of it will be handled, you know, that way. So you'll all be notified of the meeting time real quickly, so I can get it out to you after we set the time.
Thank you.
Any other questions tonight for me while I'm standing here? You'll have a lot of questions on the 15th of August, so we'll save them for then. All right, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a draft to resolution 12-23 flag banner policy. So, once again, this came up in the context of some flags.
On your desk or your table, there should be the email from the attorney.
Maurice, looking at that, what,
Resolution,
well, not the resolution, but the
email?
email from Bernard.
Sure.
So am I reading this, he's saying delete section 4?
He deleted the portion of it. I have, if you pass around, this is the current one. You should have in your email the proposed one. So I think what he said in his email is he has deleted a part of section 4.
That's what you're handing out?
I'm handing out the one that's current, the one that's proposed should be in your email packet. Resolution 1223.
Yeah, so
Right, no, it's in here, I just,
So just look at section 4 and see what is removed.
well, it's a different section for the trick is that
Yeah.
before, if the city may ban flags or permits at its discretion. However, if it permits flags, then it must do so in a non-discriminatory manner. This is the email from the attorney.
and Mr. Mayor, that's my question, is he saying then that if we have US flags, state flags,
Yeah.
school, public school flags,
Yeah.
and veteran flags, and we have to allow everything?
No. He's saying before we had a clause in there, when this is the old one, the older one, where we allowed for nonprofit organizations, and that's what he's suggesting we remove, because if you open it up to some, you have to open it up to all.
Right.
And then we've lost control over what we're presenting to the community on our public streets, and that's my concern. So,
You also had a concern about what recognized veterans group.
yeah, but then my specific question for his current version, my specific question is, what is a recognized national or state veterans organization? So that, I have to look at but that's a detailed question. I guess the fundamental question for us is, especially with the month of June just passed, I have real concerns about what kinds of flags people want to display. And we're not in a position where we can say that one's okay and that one's not okay, except on the level of,
Well, we can say it, it's whether we want that fight.
well, according to his legal analysis, we would put ourselves afoul of a Supreme Court decision. So by permitting flags to be flown, the city is not endorsing the content of the flags. Okay, fine, tell that to people looking at them. And number two, whenever the government creates a public forum, it cannot interfere with the content of the flags. So our capacity to control what is flown on the flagpoles is in the resolution. We it can't be a case by case.
No, I know, I understand what you're saying, I'm saying I don't 100% agree with the city attorney with his, I mean, I read the Supreme Court, what they said, and, yeah, it's a shame to me that we even got to this point. But I think we have to do we gotta come to some kind of conclusion on it and figure out what we're gonna do.
So that's the question, do we want to restrict it so that it is simply, this paragraph 4 of the current, organizations that are authorized to post banners or flags are governmental entities of service to the city of St. Mary's, to include schools, municipalities in the state. And 2, recognized national or state veterans organizations. And again, we need to ask what that means by recognized.
Okay.
And then a further restriction, not going to promote any retail or commercial business, but that would be more restrictive than our current resolution, which says that nonprofit organizations could collect.
So essentially, our current ones could possibly open us up to a Supreme Court, or violating a Supreme Court decision.
No, not unless we said, I don't want that nonprofit organization to fly
Right.
its flag. Which in the case of some kind of a pride flag, I would say, I don't want you to fly that flag. And then we would potentially run afoul of the Supreme Court decision. So in a way, we're restricting what we can put on the street. We're choosing to restrict that based upon kind of defensive posture for the thing that will no doubt happen at some point.
Yeah. So he just says you can either ban private flags in the right of way or permit all flags, so.
Yeah.
Does this need to be carried over to have your point about the,
Well, I would like to know an answer to the question before we approve it, but if you guys wanted to.
Is there,
talk about it.
are there recognized, yeah, I guess that is a good question, are there even recognized national or state veterans organizations?
and who's the recognizing agent? That's what he asked earlier, so I don't know, it's something I just took for granted. So we'll
There's a organization, I believe it's called like Folds of Honor, I believe is what it, I know they're a nonprofit organization, but I don't think they're recognized by the federal government or by the state as a veterans organization, so.
So carried over to answer that question. Any other questions?
Or any qualitative input. Okay. We'll carry it over. All right, next item on the agenda is the golf course.
I got another email from Rick, and I forwarded it on to Maurice, but I wasn't specific about him putting it into the packet, but I wanna, I'll read it from Rick. Here. Says this was dated July the 12th, came in to me at about 10 a.m. And it said, Gerard, I wanted to update you on this project. I was able to confirm that I have an irrigation installer lined out to start on St. Mary's in October. If everything comes together, here is what I would outline. Yourself and I meet with Mammoth to update master plan to include irrigation, top dresser range, 9-hole Bermuda course with pure distinction greens, equipment, and cart list, pickleball courts, miniature golf. Would move one fairway to the north and shorten the 9th hole. Start in October to build range and install irrigation. In spring, rework greens and seed. Late spring, sprig trees, fairways, and extended rough to Bermuda and overseed Riviera. Shoot for 4th of July opening. Thoughts, Rick?
So also in the packet was your comments about a contract, and then Nathan sent some this evening or afternoon, and I printed them for you.
You want me to address those as well?
Well, as part of the whole
Yeah.
process, but
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I'd like to, I mean, I don't know, do we need to go start contract negotiations? Do we need to get him in here again and?
Well, so, the question would be funding it. And if he has a plan that would show a lot of revenue projections, that sort of stuff, I say contract is in order to start working on it. But still, you have to come up with money initially to fund it, and if that's done through a bond, it doesn't have to have a vote on this particular matter. I think I made that a
You mean a vote of the public?
vote of the public, it needs you folks to vote on it. But at the last meeting, you also asked for information about doing a survey on like SurveyMonkey. I said it wrong again, SurveyMonkey. And so we have access to that account until January. So if you want to do some questions. I also put some information on there if you wanted us to do a paper, non-anonymous survey. But to answer your question is, it's a difficult situation. I think you need to get them in here to find out if they're willing to foot some of the expenses. Because I think that's one of your comments. And if they are, then to what degree? And then ask how they would project the revenue, because that's going to be the key. You know, what they think would work.
Because in that draft contract, they talk about they would do improvements, but that, the assumption, or the presumption maybe is that that's after they've opened, but are they willing to invest in the improvements up front?
Right, and that's kind of, I saw the same thing, Matthew, and I thought the same thing. Are they willing to, if we come in with a figure, are they willing to kick in for part of that and still reimburse us for the money that we would be putting out?
Well, I mean, they could, if they did kick in, we could lower the amount we get. I mean, I think you bring up a good question. I don't know if we're looking to make money on this after, assuming we could get to a break even. I don't even know if we're looking to make money besides the tax revenue. So you may contribute more up front, but you would get
I myself,
potentially everything beyond that. So.
I myself, I've never looked at this as like down the road in the future for us to be breaking in a bunch of revenue here without, I figured if we could get to a break-even point, if we had to spend X number of dollars to get it ready to go, and then we could get that back, I'm fine. To me, I'm fine with it. If they want to take the risk and they enjoy the reward, I'm okay with that myself. I never looked at it as a potential money maker for us. I think tax revenue would be pretty significant, and just what it would bring to the city as far as bringing people here.
So are you suggesting an option of that they'd pay for all the improvements, you hold on to all the proceeds, something like that? Is that an option?
I don't know exactly how the Great Life system works. I know you pay for a membership, but to use like their, what is it, golf simulator? Does that cost extra, or is that part of the?
If you're a
You'd get
member,
you'd get a discount.
Members get a significant discount.
I mean, could we propose something like, hey, they put that in and they make all the profit off that, we don't even touch it?
Well, that's probably the only way this thing cash flows is if that's involved on the city side.
Yeah, I don't think
so if he could install that at his own cost, and then we don't pay that.
I think that's probably the main thing that he wants us to look at.
And there's a monthly franchise fee for each bay that you get to pay. So I guess the next step would be to verify what they're willing to kick in or not. And if we're gonna have to fund this up front, then we're gonna have to get a bond attorney involved. But it's a 60 to 90 day process. If you wanna, it's one of these things I think you could have a public vote at the November election because of the scenario that would get it out from under the debt limitation, so it could happen. I'm not sure what the time frame is or what the desire is. I just looked into options. So, but I think finding what way they'll participate financially would be the next key thing.
Well, and also the term of the agreement too. I mean, some of these agreements here were just initially a 3-year term. That's it. Are we looking for a longer?
Well, the one he sent was 15 years.
Yeah,
The initial one, the ones I sent from,
Okay.
though I sent those were from 10 years ago when we was trying to go through Great Life. I was just cleaning out some files. I said, well, here's some other examples
Got it.
as how it was
Right.
then. I just threw it out there just for information. The one that he sent as an example from Florida was a 15-year term, and I would imagine if you go for a bond, it's going to be 15 or 20 years, so you would have to probably run the length of that.
I think we're looking for the three things. What are they willing to kick in, if anything, up front? What's the revenue projections that he has? And then is he willing to get creative on the revenue share? Maybe front load it on our end for the first couple of years and then flip it the other way for them for the rest of the contract. Like, what can we do? Because I think I would like to make that back as soon as possible if we could. So if we have to put some money up, but we get it back in 3 to 5 years, that seems like a win to me.
Okay.
Is that possible, you think? 3 to 5? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, unless, if he's got some revenue projections, I mean, I don't think his revenue projections are gonna exceed that of, the north, the one the top tracer that they have in North
Oh, no.
Topeka.
No, because they have 20 bays, or they'd have many more
Right.
bays than we would have. It would probably be confidential information how they calculate that, but we can ask them. Want to know if they'll kick in, what their revenue projections or business plan would basically be, and then some kind of revenue share agreement that is non-traditional.
well, right now it's 50-50, so would he consider
So
alternating that?
just to give you something to think about, they'd also be having to provide the mowers and that kind of maintenance equipment. Granted, they have a lot to probably push this way, but it'd be shoving an awful lot onto them. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I think he has a plan there. He has a series of things that need to be done. We could put a dollar amount in each one of those. That's the cost. And then we need him to project income in some way, so we can just see. And I personally would think it's a good idea to query the public in some way, given that this is such a public.
And no one has said otherwise. I'm just telling you that's the answer that I got when I asked about it.
Can we do both, the online survey and the mail survey?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if
So-
there'd be ways to,
So,
well, it could be,
so
do
the,
this.
so this is how I would do it. The mailing survey would take the number of registered voters, the list from the county. I'd print mailing labels. We'd have your questions on it and make sure that they're not double loaded or whatever, you know, all the different problems you can run into. And on there, the voter's name would be stapled or stuck, and there'd be no chance of, you know, it's not an anonymous survey. It would be an absolute, you bring it back if you want your voice counted, and, you know, we'll do it. The other ones you could try on SurveyMonkey, you could do, you know, get it quicker, but it's, I don't know, so. We would get on it.
I would like to see that, and then I also, the meeting with Rick and Mammoth, he said he'd like to meet with myself, Rick and Mammoth, and I'd also, if we do it, I'd like to include Maurice and Bobby, of course, if you guys are in favor, are okay with that.
No, absolutely.
All right.
So just, we have to do it right now, but what kind of questions are you wanting to ask? Are you gonna ask a question like, should the city of St. Mary's work or operate a golf course / golf entertainment facility on the old golf site in partnership with the private? Is that the kind of stuff, or what would you be, because I can start working on this and pumping out questions to consider.
I think that's the key question for me is, yeah, should the city well, I don't wanna say in partnership because it makes it sound like, see, my intent is for them to run a golf course.
Well, the partnership, in my opinion, mine would have been, the city would be building the facility, they'd be operating it and doing all that. But that's why I'm asking. So, and then whether it should, yeah. So I have some questions I'd written some years ago about different public facility, I think will carry over, so
Okay.
I'll send them up.
And I will email Rick and set up that meeting between the Granada and Mammoth.
Would that be here, or would that be,
I don't know, I'll email him tomorrow and I'll
because,
include you.
okay, the only reason I say that, because if it's here, and timing isn't too big a deal, we have court the first and third Thursdays, and the city attorney, might be available if you want him to, if it's not too soon, to have him, if it's here,
Okay,
and that would just, it's just a thought,
just to have him here.
just to get him introduced, because you'll get, at some point,
He's gonna get
at some
involved in
point,
it at some
it'll involve him,
I think we
but
have
it's
a
not
question.
necessary at this time.
Mr. Mayor, you have a question on that?
Dave. I don't know what sort of tax revenue golf course is gonna produce, but would it make sense to do more of like an abatement and do a capital investment? Just
To do a what?
a tax abatement over either the length of the bond or even longer. You could work something out to where there's a total abatement for the first 3 to 5 years and then a partial abatement. If you're looking to not make any money off of it, but just provide a service, I mean, the capital investment is gonna be people's issue. If it's just sitting there not being used right now versus not bringing in tax revenue, but still being used. I mean, I have no idea what that amount of money is, or if it amounts to much at all, but it would be worth looking into.
Can I direct all the people that are gonna rip my head off for that to you?
Yeah.
No, I just kidding. I'm just messing with you, Dave. Thanks. That's a good question. I think it's a good question.
Well, I think it's kind of hard to, I mean, you can estimate what the golf course would bring in tax revenue, but I think it's hard to estimate what tax revenue would be brought in from everywhere else.
Secondary first.
Secondary, yeah, I don't know how easy it is to quantify that, because there would be some benefit that we can't really track, because more people are coming in and being in the city, so I think we can only really estimate what the actual course would provide, but I think there's a ripple effect for sure.
Okay, so you're gonna set up a meeting or inquire with Rick, and staff is gonna start looking into the survey options as far as generating questions. Okay,
Then do we also, there's been a lot of talk about people that say that they're willing to volunteer labor, they're willing to volunteer time to, do some of these improvements. I guess that would be later on down the road, where if they're really serious to try and figure out how much are we talking that they can actually provide. It's great, go out there, trim some bushes and things like that. I mean, what we're talking about is probably a lot more complex than just that. But we can accept anything like that, right?
you can have volunteers. It can be tricky with the insurance and all that, and but other places do it.
That could even be a question on the survey, frankly. Would you be willing to
Are you willing to
volunteer
volunteer?
time and work to refurbish the course? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
All right, so set up a meeting, work on a survey.
We'll do.
All right, next item on the agenda, floodplain mitigation project update.
So the folks that are from Kansas Department of Ag would like to have a work session to discuss this process. August 15th was the only date that we could come up with them both being here. I'm just saying, don't have the work session, just have them at the meeting, let them say what they need to say. If it's 15, 20 minutes, or if it's 30, or if you don't want 10, just do it then. So that's the update, that there doesn't need to be a work session because the two people involved have such difficult schedules, and you guys have been work session to death. And you have a work session that night already. So that's the only update, is that there is no update, it'll just be on the regular agenda.
Okay. Anything? draft 2024 budget.
Okay. So after the last meeting, I went through and we found a couple of things that just needed to be tweaked. And keep in mind, all that's being accomplished tonight would be determining if you're going to exceed the revenue neutral rate, and then if you are, the date of the publication for the hearing, or the date of the hearing, which would be September sometime, and then the actual mill levy rate. So I printed off and distributed a sheet from Pot County, what the information they had wanted. I don't have it in front of me. Do you have it? Did you Pot County yet? Yep, that's one right there. So that's what you're approving. You've approved it. And keep in mind, this just sets the maximums. From now until the day of the hearing, you can continue to decrease or swap things around. You just can't make any numbers bigger.
Yeah, so on this big printout, just FYI, on page 38, I think it's the best view of overage in here, where based upon the budget, we heard all the inputs from the different departments, and it all seems reasonable, and we're recognizing their inflation is impacting costs with health insurance in particular and other personnel costs. The amount of revenue we need to bring in by tax is $598,000, see that on the bottom there.
Yeah.
And that's really what drives, in order to do that, the mill levy is 25.3. What is also interesting is that last year's mill levy, you see at the bottom, actual rate for 2023 was 25.17, so similar. And we exceeded the revenue neutral rate. If you look at the bottom right, in italics, revenue neutral rate, 2 asterisks, 22.84, that's the mill levy. So that shows that our property values have gone up because it reduced 20, whatever.
Under most years, in many jurisdictions, if the mill levy stayed the same, that was a success. And even though each year when the valuation was up, that generated more money, but you do need to generate more money most years. So, but this is a large amount from last year. But this is just a draft as far as the final.
So I don't think there's any, unless we were drastically to adjust the budget numbers, we're gonna have to exceed the revenue.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
So the county information I would report would be yes, 25.342, 598,889, September 5th, 2023, 7:15 p.m. City Hall. That would be the information. They'd send out, I think they call it a truth and taxation notice that they would do with all the jurisdictions that are in the same boat. And they'd send it to the people, and then they would get notice it, and they go, oh, I gotta go to that meeting, they're gonna break me. So that's what I would be asking for. The actual parts of the budget, if there's questions, we can do it. If there's issues, circle it, let me know.
So we have a consensus then, we're gonna submit this to the county.
That's all you need is a consensus.
For tonight, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
yes.
I'm good with that there.
And I'll have the auditor double check. I believe I have a time frame of August 22nd to publish, hearing September 5th, and then certified shortly thereafter. So, but thank you.
Next item, work sessions, which I think we already know about. But
Well, so there's one, I just remind you, August 15th, but then there's also, the Arnold Group was the group that was employed to review our job descriptions and salaries and that sort of stuff. They're getting far enough along, they would like to meet with individual commissioners to have meetings to explain the process.
Why individually, why not together?
Well, the spreadsheets have people's names and statuses on there and numbers, and instead of going through and eliminate the spreadsheet, they'd like to meet with you individually. You don't have to. You don't have to do that. I mean, I'd be in there or whatever.
Right, but, because they'll be talking about individual employees.
Correct. Instead of trying to do an executive session, that would get messy and probably violate the law.
Why would that violate the law?
Well, you have to give a clear, plain statement of what the executive session is. And when you go in there and start talking personnel, it can go into various things that, you know, you'd be talking
Right,
about
right,
that
right.
was not made public. So, and if you wanna have a work session with the public there, they can go through and block everything out. It's just, we've got a small group of employees and it's pretty easy. But then again, payroll information is public knowledge. But, you know, that, I asked what their preference was and,
You know, what in their study is not public knowledge?
well, we have employment, birth dates and stuff like that that isn't open to the public.
Yeah, but everybody, yeah, like you said, everybody's salary is
I know.
all public knowledge,
It
right?
can be,
Yeah.
yes. Dr. Child sat through a little bit today.
Yeah, I wouldn't particularly want it to be public. It's very detailed. It's like person, hourly rate, comparison. I'm not saying that it's something that needs to be hidden, but I'm not sure that I want my salary discussed.
Well,
I-
so the hourly rate is, I mean, someone could come in and ask for that information. In fact, we have organizations that do open record requests on that, and it gets published on websites. But,
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's kind of what, one of the things you take on when you become a city employee is you understand that that's gonna be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to meeting with them if that's the way. this
well, I think it also
wants to
works,
go.
I think it also works,
Individual meetings.
I think it also works with them working days and not coming to meetings and stretching into the night and having to go back to Wichita or Emporia. But it is your decision, but it has to be all or nothing. I don't think they will meet with some individually and then as a group, they'd like to meet with you. And it can be 2 at a time, by the way. It doesn't have to be individually.
I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. We'll get some dates from them to see what they are and bring it back.
And that actually takes care of agenda item L as well.
What was that? What was that? Oh, the Arnold Group, yeah.
Good worries.
All right.
G, TAP update.
So the city applied for the, back in March, for the study to see if you can lower the speed limits in the residential areas, and also that intersection, Second and Mount Calvary. So the city got approved by that, and yesterday was supposed to be the first day, but KDOT finally assigned a group that's gonna come out and work on a scope of the project for us. So we're gonna get going on that. So that'll be coming pretty soon.
So we will be putting the stop signs up.
We'll be getting a study to give you their results. I don't know what they are.
We had to have a study to get us a study?
Well, no, that is the study.
Well, what-
Okay.
They're gonna come out and make sure they know exactly what they're supposed to do. They're gonna develop the scope of the study, and then they'll do the study.
Initially, we needed a traffic study because we wanted to change speed limits.
Yes.
And since there was a question about safety,
I
I
got it.
think that's kind of.
I'm sorry,
No, that's fine.
I was trying to be clear. So anyway, that's this week. There's no action. I just wanted to give you an update. I'm not sure if they're gonna have surveyors out or they're gonna be running speed checks or what. We'll find out.
All right. Agenda item H, city commission email accounts.
I asked that to be put on, Mr. Mayor, and the reason being, I sent Maurice an email, I don't know, about a week ago, Maurice,
Yeah.
asking him to take my personal email off of the city website. To date, I've had 7 emails that I will not read in public. They're bad. It's just, they're very, very bad. And my wife has access to that email account, my children have access to that email account, and I don't want that email account published, so I would like an email account, because I do want people to be able to get a hold of us. But I mean, I guess I could just create another email account, a Gmail account, that's essentially what you would be doing, right?
Maybe. So we have the website smks.info. We could have emails with that, extension at the end or whatever, or we can just do a new Google one that others have done. If we go the route that you want to have it with our own domain on it, $6 or $7 a month or something like that, we could do.
Per
So are you just
Per-
asking for a city assigned?
city assigned email account, yes. I think Yeah, after what I've seen the last couple of weeks,
You don't wanna share your fan mail?
I do not wanna share. I did get some nice ones, but
Yes, well,
the bad ones are pretty bad.
the one benefit of going with the domain, all the options would be open. No one would have had any of them, so.
I'm sorry?
All the domain options would be open. You have SMKS, you could have anything you wanted. Because if you get a Google account, sometimes what you're looking for is already taken,
Oh, okay, sure.
so.
But do you need a consensus or?
I wanna, yeah,
I mean,
is everyone interested?
Is anybody else interested or is it just me?
I mean, I created a different one.
Okay, you created it. That's fine, I'll go that route. I can go that.
You can pay me $5.
I know how to do it. I'm fine with that.
There would be more functionality with the paid accounts
I
than
do
you
know
get
how
in
to,
the
I
free.
do know how to create another one. I can create,
I'm just saying, that's what I did, but
Yeah.
I
and I can do
I know what
that.
you're saying.
I don't even have to ask my children to help me, I can do it. I know how to do it, so.
All right, well,
I'll create a new one and get it to you. Thank you.
I didn't want it published.
No.
about the kind of mailbox that'll go straight to spam, delete. Agenda item I, India, lighting improvements, I think that's Dave.
Dave Perry, St. Mike's. So I have a spreadsheet that I put out in front of each one of you. It involves some power and lighting upgrades to Riverside Park. A few things that I've heard other people say they would like to see done, a few things I would like to see done. I figured I would just put some pricing to it and let you all make the decision based off of actual numbers. I know that there was some prices that y'all have received on baseball field number 5. I've heard a wide array of numbers. I don't know what all was involved with that. I don't know what the whole scope of work was. If it was just lighting on field 5, it was primary, secondary, lighting to lights, there was lights on other fields. So I broke this up into 4 different little categories. So the first one is new lighting for field number 5, high output, actual stadium lighting using wood poles that I talked to Don with the city. He said that he would be, if it's all right, more than happy to provide the poles and the labor to set the poles. And then we would take care of everything else. We'd provide the light fixtures, the installation, the trenching would be provided by Valleyscapes, the cross bracing and all the ironwork would be done by Holston Creek. And between my company, Perry Electrical Systems, Valleyscapes, and Holston Creek, we are working on doing this for as cheap as possible, as far as us not marking up, as far as us doing free or discounted labor to help out with the city's expenses. So some of the exclusions are just what I said, which is the setting of the poles, and then Don said he would take care of the transformer, then running primary, and then secondary from the any transformer to the metering equipment. City would provide metering equipment. We would actually take it from the breaker panel. So that price is $73,280. That's an estimated cost, and all these are estimates because they're, as it stands right now, they're budget numbers. They are fairly accurate budget numbers, but all pricing is subject to change after 30 days. I don't think the lighting is going to change in 30 days for what that's worth. However, on some of the steel and iron work, I have budget numbers, and walking around the fields with a clipboard and a notepad, I think some of those quantities are going to change. I think the styles and the size are going to change. I'm waiting on some cut sheets that are pending approval with the lighting manufacturer. So that's why before anybody asks, it says estimated cost when it looks like a fairly exact cost. I also have as a second line item upgrading upgraded lighting to fields 1 through 3. That is the same, it's pretty high quality lighting, stadium lighting. There are different numbers of actual fixtures than what you would see on the current poles. We went through a lighting engineer who drew up photometric drawings. We have different foot candle calculations depending on where you're at in the field. So it's fairly exact measurement of what a actual high school level baseball and softball field should be. So once again, cross bracing by Holston Creek, we would haul away the old fixtures and take care of any rental equipment, anything like that. It's just the existing wiring is to remain. There's a few variables that I wasn't able to get up 50 feet in the air. So as it is right now, I'm leaving that as an exclusion that any existing wiring is to remain. If we find an issue, that's something that's going to come up. Hopefully that might come out of the number that I have for the cross bracing being a little bit higher. Also have
Dave, really quick, in regards to that, with the LED lighting, do you see that as a cost benefit down the road with how much it costs to replace? And
Yeah, so I was gonna come to that later, but I can talk about it now.
okay, just go.
Okay. Tennis and volleyball courts lighting, whenever I go by the park at night, it seems like the tennis courts are always active, the volleyball courts are always active. I know my daughters play tennis on Wednesdays. Robert reports that he has about 30 girls down there at some times playing tennis. And that's a little bit of a high number for what it is, but I think it would be a good investment into something that a lot of the girls can do as far as sporting activities down at the park. And then something that every year before the 4th of July, I'm down there the day before on July 3rd with my tool belt, and the city boys are down there hooking up power, trying to get things functioning for some of the vendors. So I laid out a plan to get 125 pedestals placed at certain locations throughout that little corner where the mini golf used to be. Those of you who remember the mini golf. And that way it would take care of, I have some larger circuits to the south for the food trucks that need 50 amps. And then I have some smaller circuits over to like the northeast corner where some of the smaller vendors are. It would help with making sure that people have enough capacity to do the work they need to do. And also it would save the city some work having to run cords, laying them on the ground, and I think it would be a pretty good long-term functional upgrade. So getting back to the LED lighting, I mean, yeah, right now Don said that it costs about $1,000 to replace a light fixture. And that's not even a fixture, that's a ballast and a bulb. So according to him, the ballast is a few $100, maybe $500 depending on where he can find it. The bulb might be $300 depending on where you can find it, and then you put a guy in a bucket truck, that's a couple $100 in labor. And once again, he said he's been having some difficulties finding some of those. They're antiquated equipment, they're not making them as much as they used to. The standards and the quality in any metal halide fixtures, whether it's the ballast, the capacitors, or the bulbs, is dropping. So the lifespan of those fixtures is shorter than it used to be 20 years ago. I remember some of the old timers saying that they replace the ballast every 15 to 20 years. Now it seems like we're replacing them every 3 or 4, trying to warranty them. So the cost of replacing the fixture itself, plus the difficulty with finding it. Also, everyone knows that LED lighting is more energy efficient. The field number 1, for example, there's currently 44 light heads on that field shining down. The photometrics drawing show that there's 32 fixtures. So when you figure that the fixtures are, and these are 962 or 960 watt fixtures, The current ones are 1,500. So we're using half the wattage, half the energy use at a higher lumen output with 10%, 15, 20% less fixtures depending on which field you're on. So there is a lot of cost savings there. The issue is the ROI on a baseball field is pretty long because it's only on for a few hours a night for a few months out of the year. If it was your house or your store or your factory or something, your ROI would be pretty quick. So there is capital investment involved with an LED upgrade on baseball fields that you don't see as quickly as you would if you had a 24-hour manufacturing facility. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's about all I had. Is there any other questions?
Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah, that,
Thank you.
How would we pay for this, Morgan? Parks and Rec, getting some of the cut of the electrical fund.
Dave, and I agree, thank you for putting this together. We're not obligated, like, if we do this project, put it out to bid or anything, I mean,
Well,
it
so-
sounds like you got a lot of people that are willing to do it at cost or not. Is it like a,
Well, so the stuff that we'd be bidding on is gonna be donated. The labor, the materials we're gonna have on hand.
okay,
Unless there's I mean, Don will try to find whatever light you're looking for, if there's a particular one that's better than the other, and we do that. But if there's all this donated labor, there's not gonna be a lot to bid
okay,
that
good.
isn't, you know.
I just wanna make sure, cause I like what you're doing here, I just wanna make sure that we don't have to.
yeah, so everything you see here is, that is what we would provide. Maybe Don gets, or maybe the city would get better pricing on certain things like transformers. I mean, we get really good pricing on conduit and wire, right, because we buy a lot of it. So I would venture to say that us providing a lot of this material and then selling it to the city at cost is probably the best option.
Yeah.
And I think you have other estimates or other costs or quotes that you've received in the past, or maybe one. I don't know if that's a fair comparison. I don't know if it's an apples to apples comparison. All I've heard is that it was a bit higher.
Have you listed these in like priority in order, is it, that you think are a priority or?
Yeah. So, ball field 5 has no lighting right now.
Right.
So St. Mary's has the most teams in the rec leagues. And so my son's teams, they don't even play all the other St. Mary's teams. They're playing in Alma and Omega, which, hey, that's how it is, it's fine, whatever. But we have the most number of teams with the fewest number of usable fields, and that doesn't make any sense. So let's get field 5 usable and functional at tournament time so that we can actually start having more tournaments in town.
Do all those others, sorry, I just don't know, do all the others already have field or have lights? They just have the other.
Yeah, one thing somebody complained about earlier was the softball. Was it the softball tournament this year where the lights went out and it took like 20 minutes to come back on or something?
Yeah.
So obviously LEDs, they're instant off, instant on.
And that's happened a few times, and even in the men's league and things like that over on 3 that, you know, they've shut down. Then you gotta go flip them off, turn them back on, yeah, you're waiting about almost 30 minutes till you're playing ball again.
Right. And so if there is any additional cost savings or if there's any money in the budget, I do have some ideas with lighting controls, getting to where instead of turning the breaker off at the end of each night, we can set it up, we can set up more of a controller off to the side. Sometimes you can access it from your phone and, you know, Ben can shut it off from his bed and make sure that people turn the lights up.
Everybody has to get up
That's
in the
right, yeah.
morning to go run down to the
Yeah,
park,
that's right,
turn
you
off
can just
lights.
click on your phone and go. Anyway, there's a lot of options there. Once you get the higher quality lighting, you can do more things with it. And yeah, I mean, it does save money in the long run. These fixtures are They're actual baseball stadium lights. They're not Amazon 400-watt LED light equivalents. They're made for baseball stadiums.
All right.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, Marty, I mean, the question that Matt had was if, you know, how to pay for it, but, I mean, if we maybe not do all of them all at once, you know, start with field one, how would we pay for field one?
Okay, so, it would turn out that the C clip.
Five, I'm sorry.
I know what you meant, We'll see how the C-clip rebid comes out, and then what we wanna put away for the next C-clip one. Sales tax is an option. I'm not recommending it, but some of it can be charged to electric. I believe some of the street light costs were charged to electric. And, that was a general fund expense, okay? So that would be one way to do it. So, it can be done. I'll just pencil something out for you. Okay?
All right, next item on the agenda, an invoice question.
Patty Thomas, St. Mary's. So last week I received an invoice from the city for $331.50 for Diamond Drive from the Experiencing Grace Tournament. So I'm just a little confused as to why I received this bill personally, because the last time I was here, as you all know, the commission made it pretty clear that I wouldn't be getting charged for the field use. So my first question, I guess, is I don't know who authorized this and whose decision it was to bill me personally.
I did it.
Okay. What Diamond Drive?
When it rains, to make the field playable, you can apply something called Diamond Dry.
Correct.
So that was the rec department's Diamond Dry. Wasn't authorized by anybody.
That's actually not true. I had Bob Schindler down there who authorized to open the shed and give me the Diamond Dry, and I also had Gerard Kleinsmith as an umpire for me, and he never got told that I would potentially get charged. Another thing, I ran a tournament last year and I used Diamond Dry, never got charged.
I was unaware of last year's theft.
There was no theft. He's
Unless-
accusing me of, are you accusing me of stealing the Diamond Dry
Well, if
when,
you used it last year
Yeah.
and didn't pay for it, I
yeah.
wonder.
Alex Whitehead was down there and approved it.
Okay.
Yep,
She's asking that you
Waive that.
waive the $340.
Yeah.
yes, I am asking that.
Any input?
I think probably, I should probably stay out of it, only given the fact that I was there.
So you don't have.
I don't have that authority to authorize anything, but I was there, but I don't, so I think based on that, I'm gonna abstain from the discussion.
And I would just add that city employees are authorized to give away city materials.
So, who are you, Patty, who are you saying you think, you know, kind of, in a sense, authorized you to use this stuff in, you know, that was, you know, they're there and so they didn't say anything, so, you know, in that sense, you know, you maybe felt like, okay, I can use this stuff. Is
Well,
that-
there was a precedent set last year if she received that without being billed. I mean, that was kind of a precedent, that's not necessarily her fault.
No, I'm asking a question here, I'm not pointing a finger, okay?
Are you asking like who gave me permission to use the Diamond Dry this year?
Right,
That made me feel like I could use it?
Yes.
Who unlocked the shed for me?
yes,
Bob Schindler, who was the
Okay.
point of contact. And I
okay,
spoke with Genevieve Wingeter since Alex Whitehead wouldn't pick up any of my phone calls for 3 hours, because I guess he was at a meeting or something. So I reached out to Bob from Genevieve, told me to reach out to Bob.
Mr. Mayor, it appears we have a personnel issue. I would
agree.
then waive the amount,
Yeah,
and
so,
we'll deal with it
right,
in an executive session.
we'll get a
One of these meetings.
consensus on that in a second. I would say qualitatively, it was clear that we were supporting your event. Now, I would say in my mind, I didn't know that that meant we were gonna provide this thing that I'd never heard of before. So, I would just ask that you try not to assume that there's any malice involved with billing you, something was used, and so.
I mean, I understand that, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I mean, I've heard that I was gonna get billed the day after my event because your city clerk Shirley Whitehead was down at the park telling everybody that I destroyed the fields and that she was billing me. So that's where I'm
Well,
concerned, confused, that's why he said
Maurice
he.
says, we'll deal with the personnel things
Okay,
individually.
good.
But,
I just think it's unprofessional to speak about bills that are owed to the city, personal bills that are owed to the city to other people. I was told that it was going around Onyx. I mean, I had known before I even got the bill last week that I was getting billed, which is a little weird in my opinion, so.
Yeah. So the request is, can we waive that, and consensus is yes.
Yes.
And we'll try to resolve any communication gaps
Thank you.
and any potential lack of professionalism.
Thank you, and can I mention one more thing?
Yes.
After I got approved to use Field One, after the meeting, my post that I shared on the rec department page got removed by Alex because he was upset I got approved for that, and that is the only page that he advertises rec events. So I just wanna make that clear that my post also got removed after the meeting, that needs addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd also like to add one thing. We apologize for not moving the bases in that you approved due to that. We never got that done. The shorter distances.
Well, it sounds like we have some room for improvement, and we'll,
Yes, and also the clicker was also missing that I asked for 2 weeks prior to, for Alex for the scoreboards, and he didn't know until that night that it was missing, and that's like a $400 clicker.
do we have this?
It's back.
Okay,
Clicker is back.
Okay,
anything else?
that's it. Thank you for clearing that. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Yes,
Ben.
I don't need this anymore. Here you go. Have that bill back.
All right, I think, the last item, agenda item is just, I just added a couple sentences to that letter that I suggested we send to the library, acknowledging her letter and recommending for her consideration, Patrick, Gregory, and Lewis for, it's not really different from last, so I just think we should answer her letter. It's, I did add I apologize for this delayed response, which I do, but, you know, we only meet every couple weeks.
And you weren't here one meeting, you weren't here, so.
So if we're all right with this, I'll just sign it after,
And you have a copy that you can sign.
yes,
It's all good paper.
We just need, just a consensus, right? We don't need to.
That doesn't need to vote for it, no.
Yeah, okay.
and that's the end of the agenda. We have, reports.
Bob, do you have anything to report?
We just started our chip and seal, I don't know if you noticed Second Street,
Yeah,
it's the Mountain Library, they needed it, that was, out of our 5,800 gallons of oil that we did, that's one tanker load, that was 1,900 gallons, and, we're gonna be starting here soon, and, on Mission Street, Alma, Dream, all the way up to.
so I was just curious.
Yes.
You did it, and then we had that hard rain, does that affect anything?
Once it's down, rolled in, and
Traffic
traffic's
is
on
here.
it. That's all I have.
I have nothing.